will result in any savings. If a position ends up being overpaid, we are simply not going to get an agreement from the union to reduce the pay of that position. So this is all upward and onward. That salary survey is predicated on the assumption, and it is an assumption, quite frankly, in anecdotal conversations, that there are difficulties retaining or replacing positions as a result of salary. That's the first thing we need to do. It may be the case, but I certainly have seen nothing other than anecdotal reports that this position or that position is hard to fill, or these people are leaving because of money. So I think first we need to find out if, in fact, we have a problem that's associated with salary that's more widespread than simply a position here or there. Because if it's here and there, then the way to solve that, of course, is by looking at those positions, negotiating with the unions on those positions and moving forward. So, again, I emphasize we cannot do anything with salaries without permission and negotiation with our unions. And we need to respect that so to do an RFP based upon that eminently is from my perspective, is a mistake and probably potentially a waste of money. Because I noticed that was one of the things that you're suggesting we do right now. I think it's a huge mistake to do it right now. So I think we have a lot of good ideas, and it's one of the things I've said many times, that the things we could do that are good ideas are legion. The things that we have money to do are severely limited. So it's we need to look at all of these things. So I think these are all good recommendations, except for that RFP immediately for the salary. But I think everything else makes a lot of sense. It's a matter of what we can do now and moving forward. The final thing I'll say, I want to point out, because the way the budget was put together this year with the contingency account, it's important to understand. The departments were asked to avoid the padding their budgets, which has often been done. And I don't mean that negatively. Anyone that's done a budget knows that you anticipate that you're going to have expenses that you don't know what they are. But you anticipate that, you put some money in. So that's what I mean by padding. But bad term, I'm sorry I used it. But departments were asked, don't do that. Here's the plan. Budget what you need, what you know you'll need. If the unexpected occurs, we'll have a contingency account that's larger than in the past, and you can draw on that. So that contingency account is there because we know as we go through. And I think we've seen at least one instance already where we've had to draw on it. That's why it was there. If we look at that and say, well, that money's available, then what's going to happen is we're going to inflate this year's budget. That'll have an effect next year, the year after, the year after. So we just need to move very cautiously and make certain that we have the funds to do these things now, 2019, 20, 21, and into the future.
Good point,
Thanks.
Mr. Batman. Mr. Whitman, are you, you're in the house? It's good to see you.
I'm
Tucker.
here. It's my first time. I'll see if I can figure it out. First time in a long time. So since I've been here, and since before I've been here, due to budget constraints and wanting to save money and efficiency and everything else, the answer has been to downsize government. Make it smaller, cut positions, make the workload bigger on our employees. And it does save money to a certain extent. I do believe we can create positions and save money as well. I believe it's possible, whether it's in efficiency or looking for savings or whatever it may be. But I would like to see where those savings are going to be before we create a large number of positions. I mean, there's a lot of proposed positions here, and I'm sure some of them can save money. But I would like to see some of that on paper.
Well, just to add to that, I mean, we've been on this board for a while now, Tucker, and we have eliminated even whole operations like the nursing home. And I mean, I'd asked our last administrator to tell us exactly what that impact did to our bottom line. Now, as Tucker said, smaller was always the issue, and we did see it, what was it, 100 people or some odd people, and I'd like to see what the impact of that is. I still haven't seen it from our previous administrator. So I know you wanted to comment on Mr. Batman's comments. Justin, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think it was a very good point, Mr. Batman, about that recommendation was based on anecdotal evidence. And truth is, much of this report is, although it's supplemented with some peer comparison to either regional or like-sized counties. I'd have to go back and count the numbers. I may have talked about 10 positions or more, but I certainly didn't talk about them all in the context of short-term. I think some of those were talked about as, medium-term or long-term. And there are a couple of areas where I think we need to make those investments more immediately. One of them was in probation, which brought up the conversation about space. The other that I'd like to move forward with as soon as I have authorization from you, and I've been speaking with you about it conceptually since I got here, which is the Department of Public Works. As you all know, we have a temporary consultant who's here assisting with the management of the operation there. It's a temporary solution, and I think we have to move forward with a permanent solution. So if there's one thing I would love to walk out of here with at least a nod of assent from you, is to start putting the staff resources into implementing that recommendation. I'd also like to begin to make those physical changes about building out that office and optically and regularly having Lynn on the 6th floor as the county budget director, as part of our office, as part of the administrator's office. That doesn't really cost any money, but I think it greatly increases capacity.
Ms. Foley?
Yeah, Justin, I think you did a great presentation for us. I also think that, as Keith mentioned, his point was well taken. I think to a certain extent there's maybe at least some conflict from me with the way we are discussing adding positions even in the short term. And that's because I think as a legislature, and I don't want to speak for the legislature, but as a legislature, we've tried to push as many new initiatives and positions into some type of budget cycle as we could. And here we are, and that was to get away from a Band-Aid approach in the past that was not really done well. And so the point being, when we are talking about now adding positions in a short-term manner to try to fill different holes that we have, what can you say to your recommendation that we are going for a short-term addition of positions as opposed to trying to fulfill the legislature maybe want of offering those positions in a much
Sure.
Bigger picture?
It's a great question. And I'm not proposing adding a lot of new positions right now mid-year. I do think that it makes sense to get 2 probation officers in the hopper, in part because we're going to have the resources coming from the state for those positions, and even if we don't, we still need them. So I think that it's a calculated gamble in that I'm expecting the state funds to materialize as promised, but it's also looking at what the lead time is for recruiting and hiring those positions, as well as ensuring that you get the next spot in the academy for their training. So I think that's a calculated gamble. That one is I would recommend that you take. As far as the Public Works Director, I think that there will be a budget impact from that, but you also have to remember that we have other vacancies in the department that hopefully will offset some of that. But I'm talking about upgrading a position, so we at least have a base investment already there, and we'd be looking at at an additional investment that we would need to carry over time, whether that be this year or in the next budget cycle. But I'm looking at the outset of we're 2 months or 2.5 months into a 6-month contract for management support there, and I want to be ready at the hopefully by the end of the summer when that contract ends to have a smooth transition of management.
Mr. Batman?
I just want to, forgive me because I already spoke once, but I want to clarify a couple of things. The one is the plan for Raise the Age. The has been, and maybe that's changed, but the plan for Raise the Age has been that we would put together a plan for, that's the plan. We would put together a plan proposal of how to implement that, and that proposal would be all-encompassing. That then goes to the state for approval or disapproval. I would say that's what we need to do, and in that context, it might make perfect sense to move forward with probation, but only in that context. It's less than a calculated risk to hire people now and then put it in the plan later. We've seen what the state's approach, and I absolutely believe the governor and the senior staff that they will support the cost that we have to incur. But I think they've been clear also that cost has to be part of a larger plan, and so we need that plan, and then I think we can move forward as you've suggested. The other caution I have in terms of the budget is that the way we balance a budget in Cayuga County is by understanding that we will have open positions during the year. If you look at our budget, we're drawing about $300,000, give or take, on the fund balance. That draw is going to be covered in the planned budget covers that draw by things like having open positions during the year. We never know what positions are going to be open, but we know they're going to be open. If we take those positions as money available, then we will not have a balanced budget. This is all part of the way the budget has been put together. So it's important that we not look at the fact that one position is open, that means that we have X number of dollars. So again, another caution in terms of how we approach those budget numbers as we look at what resources we need to move this plan forward.
Well, it would be nice to see our partner, the governor, come up with the funding for whatever he dictates to this board and other counties.
And that is correct. In the Raise the Age context, we are in active development of our plan,
Great.
of our budget proposal tied to that plan across a number of departments. In fact, probation's leading that effort, closely working with Ray and Lynn and DSS and budget. So to the extent that we're proposing 2 new positions in that probation area for those positions, that will be in the plan. To the extent that we hired 2 and got them in the training cycle and then had a plan approved that they could move into, I do think that's potentially feasible, but your caution is well received. And I do understand what you're saying about kind of the how planned vacancy affects the overall budget. You and I have had that conversation before as well.
Mr. Charles?
Yes, Charles Ripley, Legislator 9. I'm just a nugget here, starting this year, but I am familiar with budgets. This whole idea, as Keith described it, on the playground. However, the DPW thing, I thought we were in discussions with a shared service agreement to maybe combine our county highways with the towns, perhaps making the north district and the south district of the county do away with the towns. Wouldn't that help solve this problem? And it would also probably justify a DPW director, engineer.
There's a lot in there, so I want to break it down into parts. First, the county is not advocating for eliminating any town departments. I want to make sure that